We pay to move
The
on.
only thing that works against us is the Gresham's law, because I'm one of the people that think Bitcoin is both money and a store of value, and I want to see people use it as money, and I use it as money. Like, I spend it. I do, like, hopefully you guys will accept Bitcoin for the next survey. So I'll try to convince you guys to accept Bitcoin. But I know that the average person is going to want to not spend something that, that's why they have the Gresham's law. But so it's the only thing that kind of works against Bitcoin, but I rationalize it as a stable coin will help Bitcoin because it will expose more people to what Bitcoin is and what cryptocurrency is.
So let's say, because I actually had a friend recently who got paid, I think it was like 10,000 Bitcoin for a project that they did. And they were wondering, they were like
$10,000 worth of Bitcoin or 10,000 Bitcoin?
Oh, I think it was $10,000 worth of Bitcoin.
Okay,
I don't know.
because 10,000 Bitcoin is like $100 million.
No, it was $10,000 worth. I think
Okay.
what 400 Bitcoin they said. I don't know how many I don't know, quarter Bitcoin. I don't know. It was 10,000 worth of Bitcoin.
10,000 something. It's probably $10,000 worth of Bitcoin. That would be one Bitcoin, pretty much.
Okay.
Right now.
Okay.
A little bit more than one Bitcoin.
And they were debating if they should, like, keep it as Bitcoin because it, or play the market, or if they should take it out. And I would have recommended to keep it in the form it was, but they ended up taking it out of the market. Is that a silly thing? Or
I think it depends. Like, that's an example of Gresham's law, right? Like, the Bitcoin is actually, that's not an example of Gresham's law because they would have kept the Bitcoin.
Right.
It depends on the person's scenario. If they have a comfortable level of existence, if they're not struggling to make ends meet, if they don't have a lot of debt, naturally you're probably going to want to keep it in Bitcoin. But if you have financial pressure, you need money. So if you're not in an investment mindset, you're probably just going to sell it to dollars and use the dollars to pay your bills.
Right.
If you are naturally in an investment mindset, or you're open to learning about it, then for sure you should keep the Bitcoin.
That's a great
It's just all about it's all about risk. Like, how much of your net worth do you want exposed to Bitcoin? I recommend everybody gets at least 5% of their net worth in Bitcoin and hold it yourself. But if you're in debt and you're struggling and you're not thinking about investing, it's hard to rationalize to keep Bitcoin when it's worth $10,000 and you got all these interests piling up on you and stuff. So I totally get it, but you should tell your friend to go buy back at least 0.2 of the Bitcoin and just keep it long term.
You know what? I will make that recommendation. Yeah.
There you go.
I do just want to, get through this. I do have to run in about 5 minutes. But I want to.
Yeah, I'm supposed to be in a virtual reality meeting right now with a bunch of Bitcoiners, but I'm having too much fun here. So yeah, let's wrap it up. We're going on 2 hours.
I know. Okay, so let's wrap it up. You'll get to your meeting. Okay, so we're almost there, but just real quickly, generation effects. Gen X was significantly more confident than all other generations that Bitcoin could 50x. So we have Gen X, in the lead, being like, yes, that's plausible. And then we have millennials right in second, thinking, yes, it's possible for it to hit 8 trillion. And then what's super, super cool also, we have socioeconomic effects. The poor and wealthy are more likely to believe that, the poor and the wealthy are more likely to believe that it's plausible, while low income and middle class are more likely to doubt it. So we have Gen X and millennials, and we also have, the wealthy and the poor thinking that this is possible. So let's zoom in on this, right? We want to know the wealthy, that's the first factor that's making people think that Bitcoin has a very powerful future. And so who's the most likely to invest it? So first factor, we have the socioeconomic status of wealthy. And the second factor, we have Gen X and millennials as the leaders, right?
Right.
So now we actually want to see. Yeah, so we're going to actually. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying, yeah, that's great. Let's go.
Okay, cool. So we're going to look at, we're going to dive deeper into Gen X, just focusing on the wealthy Gen X, and just focusing on the wealthy millennials, and to see how that turns out. So both of these are going to be wealthy individuals. And the question is, do you think it could ever increase in price 50x to be worth the same amount as gold, as 8 trillion? And we have 74% of wealthy Gen Xers saying, yes, that's plausible, which is super, super high. and significantly higher than any other, and 57% of wealthy millennials saying the same. But then what's really interesting that even though the Gen Xers are in the lead saying, yeah, that's possible, we have the millennials that are saying it'll be worth more. So of that entire 9% segment that was like, yes, it'll be worth more, 32% are the wealthy millennials. And the rest be millennials as well, but these are specifically wealthy millennials. So
that's good data.
Yeah. So these would be like two of the target demographic.
That lines up too with that I mentioned earlier. Tom Lee from Fundstrat had estimated the number of Bitcoiners at like a low end of 500,000, and his big thesis on Bitcoin is that it's going to be the generational trade for millennials. So previous generations had the stock market, real estate, .com, like tech stocks, and millennials kind of missed that, and that cryptocurrency is going to be the like 20x sort of like generational trade for this group of people.
Yeah.
And that this shows like naturally it seems like wealthy millennials are like, hell yeah, it's going to be worth a lot more, 32% of them.
Yeah, they're very, very confident, these millennials. So yeah, super interesting to note. That would be the last conclusion. Listen, I have a ton more information for you. I'm happy to just send this to you. These are just facts about what are the differences between those who wanted to invest in Bitcoin from the get-go versus those who didn't. So these were like from the get-go, who are those Bitcoin investors, and are there differences amongst them? And I guess just quickly, the biggest difference is that people who are likely to invest in Bitcoin are just wealthier as an overall fact. So
okay, makes sense.
I'll send this to you. These are our hypotheses. Everything we just went through, but summarized in all of these, specific slides on the same page.
Perfect.
Yeah, gender differences, just summarized on one page about demographic differences, about how baby boomers are less interested, as we see on that bottom side. No, I'm not interested. Those are the baby boomers. And then also as an investment choice, the last question, again, baby boomers are much lower. And then the last question, socioeconomic status. This is interesting. And this is just one last slide about the wealthy, and it's everything we've just talked about. That very first graph on the top right side, right? Those who report being very knowledgeable about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. It's what we just saw. Wealthy people are, and across generations, wealthy people are much more likely to think they're very knowledgeable. And then the question right underneath is a very, typical question about Bitcoin. Who controls it? So simple, but the wealthy are not more right about it. So again, that just
makes sense. That's good.
Yeah. So that just wraps that insight up there. And just an overall conclusion. So even though only 13% of the population was interested in Bitcoin at the beginning, 38% was interested by the end. And that's there was an overall shift among those who didn't invest in it at first, and later 33% of those did move over, which is awesome. And then being wealthy is largely indicative of desire to invest in Bitcoin, with Gen X and millennials most positive about Bitcoin's future. And then just to leave this off, like food for thought, follow-up studies, it'd be super interesting to understand which information was most effective in changing the non-investors' minds, the ones that didn't choose Bitcoin at first, like what were those pieces of information, or was it everything combined? And looking at why they switched. And then we would also want to look at the barriers, because there were still 60% of people that decided to still not invest in Bitcoin, and what else might sway them. So that would be really interesting. How else can we reach those 62%? What were their worries, their fears, and really start to understand that more. So that's
it. Sense. Oh, well, thank you very much. This has been great.
Yeah, thank you so much. I learned a tremendous amount of information about Bitcoin. I'm afraid that's all I'm going to be talking about for the rest of the day with everyone I see.
Perfect. You got to start a Twitter account. You'll fit right in with Bitcoin Twitter.
That sounds good. I'm going to have to follow you. Where can I follow you?
On Twitter, you can find me at Brad Mills Can.
Perfect.
And then post links to my podcast and stuff there. I talk about Bitcoin with people, and hopefully this is going to go on the podcast too. And if people are listening to this on my podcast, do you want people to follow you? What would you like to say to people that are listening to my podcast?
I will say, if anybody else is interested in getting more information, more statistics about interesting topics, you know where to find me. Hot Specs, check us out. And also, I really just want to say, Brad, I think it's absolutely incredible the amount of just knowledge that you have about this topic, and I think it's wonderful that you're really promoting it and educating people about this this currency. And I really think we're going to see a shift in the next few years.
I appreciate it, and I'm thinking like some takeaways for me here is one of the main things that we would want to do as a community is to try to understand what the main difference is there between men and women and how to engage more women in learning about cryptocurrency.
I think that's very well said. I think that would be really important as well.
So looking forward to seeing the results of the other surveys that we do in the other countries. Maybe we'll find that women in like India or women in China are more interested than men and actually have more knowledge about it. We'll see.
Yeah, exactly. That'll be interesting if those gender differences hold, or if they're different in different countries. Yeah, that'll be interesting.
Alrighty. Well, thanks very much, Esther.
Yeah, thank you as well. I'll send you the doc, and feel free to follow up with any questions, of course.
Perfect.
Okay, I'll talk soon. Enjoy your Saturday.
You too. Bye.
Bye.